Kings fans are going to be mad at me for this one. On today's show, one of the biggest villains in Sacramento Kings history, the man that broke all of our hearts with his game winner in Game 4 of the 2002 Western Conference Finals, Robert Horry joins me right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all offseason long. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com, promo code Locked On. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports reporter and producer for ABC 10 News. And before you throw your virtual tomatoes at me, before you write me angry emails and get loose in the comment section going, Matt, you traitor, what the hell are you doing having Robert Horry on your show? Look, he's a Kings villain for sure. And this is not the last time this week that we're going to talk about Kings villains. But Robert Horry, we had the opportunity at ABC 10 and Locked On Kings to have Robert Horry on the show. And even if he's not your favorite player, even if he's someone that you probably never want to see or hear from again, I encourage you, stick around, listen to this interview, because Robert is, of course, going to talk about his shot, although we don't spend much time on that. He's going to talk about playing in Sacramento, playing in front of Kings fans, sharing his opinion on this season's team, or this current Sacramento Kings team, talk a little bit about De'Aaron Fox, talk about what it takes to get from good, where the Kings are at, to great, like Mike Brown wants to get them to. Robert provides, I think, a lot of really interesting perspective. Plus, as much as you hate him for his shot and his moment and what it did to the Sacramento Kings in Game 4, he's a great guy. Like, I really enjoyed talking to Robert. I really enjoyed having him on. It was a unique opportunity. And I know he's not well appreciated in Sacramento Kings circles, but to have him on the Locked On Kings podcast, I thought was a really fun treat and something that I hope you will enjoy here during the off season. So give it a chance. Listen to Robert a little bit. I think you'll like this conversation. If you want to get mad at anybody, you can get mad at me, and feel free to respond to anything that Robert has to say or whatever. You can send it to me at Matt George Sack on Twitter. You can find me via email, Matt.George, or rather mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. You can send me an email there. And of course, YouTube comment section. I know you're already getting loose about this interview, so listen to it. Respond to what you actually hear. Don't just respond to your preconceived notions of Robert Horry before you even listen to the man speak. Give this episode a try. I think you'll really appreciate my conversation with Kings villain, Robert Horry. Pleasure to be joined by, if we're being honest, one of the biggest villains in Sacramento Kings history, mainly because of one moment, but in reality, because of one series that, I'm biased, I consider maybe the greatest playoff series of all time, certainly the greatest Western Conference Finals series of all time. Sacramento Kings, Los Angeles Lakers, featuring Robert Horry and the famous shot that he hit in Game 4. Robert, it's a pleasure to have you here on ABC 10 and the Locked On Kings podcast, my friend. Thank you so much for joining me.
Man, thanks for having me, man. Why you had to start it out with me being a villain, man?
It is what it is. You know what it is. One shot can make a moment. One shot can also turn a franchise against you, or a fan base against you. Fans have not let that go, even though it was so long ago. Robert, that shot specifically, I mean, that series was just incredible. I'm going to ask you and focus more on that series and that battle than just the shot itself. But from a Sacramento perspective, that defined who Robert Horry is. But that shot doesn't define who you are and who you were as a professional NBA player, did it?
It's so weird. There's so many players in this league that can do so many different things, but once you get labeled, that's who you become. And for me, it started out in Houston, my last couple of years in Houston. And there's, he's a three-point shooter. I'm like, okay, I'm labeled now. And you never want to be labeled. You just want to be a basketball player. And I think for me, and it's fine with me because it helped me make a lot of money. It kept me in the league a long time. But it's always great to have a label, and a good label. I remember, when I left the Lakers and was playing against, the Lakers, and Kobe went over to Karl Malone, and Kobe just looked at Karl like, "Don't leave Rob. Don't leave Rob." It's funny. And then in that game, he left me, but I missed the shot. He's like, "I told you not to leave Rob." And Karl, like, he misses it. I don't care. That normally doesn't happen, but it is what it is, man. But I love playing in Sacramento, man. I love playing in Arco. Yeah.
Speaking of Kobe, I mean, I'm looking at a picture right now from, May 26th, and it's him, it's Kobe, it's your teammates, it's Shaq, it's the celebration of that moment. Now, we associate that moment with heartbreak here in Sacramento, but for you, especially with Kobe, of course, to have that reaction, to have that moment and be a part of the greatness that was that Lakers dynasty at that time. How significant was that part for you when you look back and see photos like that?
It's great, especially after his passing, and understanding his passion for the game, and the way he played the game, and just that video of that last second shot, and his excitement, and Shaq's shock, and and it was just a great moment for me. And I think that shot, because of that stage, really made the Big Shot Bob, a Big Shot Rob, a Big Shot name come to light. And that's what, even when you listen to the announcers, that's all they say. And for me, that was another moment where I had my peers to believe in me, and my teammates to believe in me, and then, my opponents to worry about me. And that's what you want as a player, especially a player like me. You look around this league, there's so many players that are like me, that, okay, you sit over on the bench, you playing the game, and all of a sudden, "Oh, we need a shot." And like, "Hold on, man, you ain't ran no play for me all game. Now you're gonna run a play for me, you expect me to make it?" And and then you knock down shots. And I used to tell coaches, I whisper in their ear, I said, "You run plays for me throughout the game, we're gonna be in this position." So, but it is what it is. And Kobe, God rest his soul, was a great teammate and a great human being.
What about from the Kings side? I'm not sure if during the series or even after the game or anything that I know it was a pretty heated rivalry at the time, but did you ever have anybody from the Sacramento Kings mention the shot, or say, "Hey, nice shot," or "I hate you for hitting that shot," or even to this day, like, has anyone ever contacted you about that shot or talked to you from the Kings about that shot?
Vlade and Chris, I ran into them at an All-Star event. That's the great thing about All-Star. You get to see former teammates, old opponents, and I have a picture of me standing between them, and they both like have their fists up against my head. I'm like, so it's just one of those things that you go out through your career of basketball, and you meet these guys, you talk about it, and for me, it's a way to get free dinners and free drinks when I'm out, because people in LA still remember that shot. I was just in Sacramento a couple of months back when my son Harvard Wesley was playing up there for the high school championship. And one of the ushers was sitting there looking at me like, "I shouldn't let you sit here, right?" I'm like, "Hey, it didn't happen in this building, so we good, right?" So, but and I think overall, people just like the competitive nature, the competitive spirit that I played with, and one of those guys that you didn't really have to worry about doing any crazy stuff, and just wanted to play and compete.
You mentioned so you've been inside the Golden One Center, which is excellent. I grew up, Robert, just so you know, I grew up in the golden era of Arco. I grew up with your guys' series, the battles between the Lakers and the Kings. And it's been a long time since Sacramento has had that kind of environment. We got that back, Kings Warriors. I wouldn't put it quite on the level of Kings Lakers rivalry or that series, but it did go 7 games. We got that series back in Sacramento. You mentioned loving playing in Arco and loving playing in front of those fans, even if it was a hostile environment. Were you excited by it all, or did you pay any extra attention to the Kings being in the playoffs, the return to the playoffs, because of that environment that you got to participate in?
Actually, I did. I was very happy for the Kings organization. I think De'Aaron Fox is a hell of a player. I actually was mad when the Lakers didn't draft him, because I'm always rooting for SEC guys, and that arena is so electric. And the fact that they still use the cowbells because of Phil Jackson is amazing. I know what Bob Myers, that was a great clip with a fan behind him, with the cowbell, and he didn't even budge. It's funny, but the Sacramento fans are huge, and they're great fans. And you always think about franchises are in towns where that's the only show. I think about when I played in San Antonio, that was the only show. So you get a fan base like no other. They come out, they support, because I don't mean this in a bad way, but they have nothing else. And you think about those fans have been through some ups and downs, all the way back to, to when Richmond got there, and then, when Kenny Smith, Otis Thorpe, when they first got there from old days, and now, the Chris Webber era and the Vlade Divac, and they went to right there. Think about it. They was right there from winning a championship. And I just think if guys sit back and look at an organization, I think now with the new ownership and the way the Kings ownership is, I think that's a great franchise to play it. Hell, I would even want to coach there because I think the fan base is great, and it's just a great town to be in, and I'm happy for them. I'm glad they're back.
Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by PrizePicks and their amazing promotion that they have going on right now. This promotion is something you're going to want to jump on. It's their $1 million daily Superflex promotion for the NBA Finals. Every day of the finals, one PrizePicks user will win a chance at becoming a millionaire. One entry will be placed after 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time and will be randomly selected each day. Whoever placed that entry will be given a 6-pick flex with the following payouts. You get 6 correct picks, you get $1 million. You get 5 correct picks, $80,000. 4 correct picks, $16,000. You can find more details about this competition at prizepicks.com/million. When I say picks, what does that mean? Well, the way PrizePicks works, you pick 2 to 6 players, and whether you think they're going to score more or less than their PrizePicks projection. So let's say for game 1 of the NBA Finals, there's the projection for Nikola Jokic is 31.5 points. The projection for Jimmy Butler is 28.5 points. Let's say you take the over on both of those. You pick 2 to 6 players, you get those right, you win money right then and there. No competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. They offer safe and fast withdrawals, and it's currently operational in over 30 states and in Canada. When you sign up to play for the first time, download the PrizePicks app, go to prizepicks.com, use our promo code Locked On for a 100% instant deposit match up to $100, meaning you deposit $100, you get $100 right then and there. Don't forget to enter promo code Locked On and sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. With how the Sacramento Kings play, and you mentioned De'Aaron Fox already. You said if you were a player, you would want to play there. Like, if free agency has never been the easiest thing for the Sacramento Kings, but to you, what is the most attractive part of the Sacramento Kings that you say, I want to be a part of that?
I always look at stuff as a player of my caliber and what I used to. I was like, I would fit in there. A guy who could play 3 or 4 or even 5 in this day and era. And I would say, okay. And then you got a coach in Brown. It's like this is good. They look like they like each other. And that's the biggest thing when you look at guys and they feel, they're not one of the ones they just run over and help guys up. That's just the norm. But when guys are laughing and smiling and have a love for one another, and I just think I look at that, the way they've come together in the past couple of years, a great young core, and they just play well together. So that makes the atmosphere good. We always talk about culture, especially what's going on with the Miami Heat. I think when you got a culture that starts with the coaches and staff and the ownership, that kind of trickles down to the players. They know what's at stake.
The offense is one of the things that I think captured the attention of the entire league this year with how dynamic the Kings offense is, the amount of scoring that they have and they bring. I mean, it's centered around De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis, of course. But if you could inject yourself, prime Robert Horry into what the Sacramento Kings offense does, how much would you enjoy playing in an offense like that? And I know the league is very different even now, what a good shot is now compared to what it was when you were playing, but do you ever wish that you were playing in this era, or were you happy with playing in what I consider to be the golden era, in my opinion?
Well, I just feel like I could have, transitioned to do both eras. Because if you look at the way they play now, I mean, if we would go 1 for 4 from 3, you better next time you play, go to the hole and get a basket, stop shooting threes. But now 1 for 4, you gravy, man. You probably one of the best shooters in the league. And so I think now that's one of the things that would my game would have crossed over. Because I look around the league, I look at a lot of players, and they're my build, 6'9", 3-point shooter, go to the hole, dunks, and that's what the league is about. You only see about a handful of guys that's gonna pump fake and hit a mid range, because it's almost like a mid range is a no. You want to get spanked on the hand, but this era is a great era. I know we always want to compare eras and say who era is the best, but it's just the guys now, what they're able to do with the basketball. The training, not just with the training on the outside, but what they have to go nutrition-wise, go inside to keep them ready, stronger, and faster. So it's a different era. And I would love to be able to take the technology and the knowledge that they have and give it to us and see how we would have been as far as like body-wise, strength, and because these guys now are crazy good with the handles. What the refs allow them to do also is a big key. So I would have transitioned pretty damn good to this era.
Yeah, they say it's less of a big man's game now and more of a guards game, and yet you have MVPs, Joel Embiid, Nikola Jokic, who are dominating and winning MVPs and things like that. But when I talk about this era, I've had these conversations plenty of times, like, would yesterday's big men thrive in today's era the way they would? And like, I look at Shaq, and you played with Shaq. Shaq was so dominant. I have a hard time imagining if Shaq was in his prime right now, maybe he'd be shooting more threes than he was in his time. But do you think like a prime Shaq today would change NBA back, or at least he would still thrive, right, in the NBA if he's playing today?
He'll thrive even more because you think about you cannot foul guys now just to foul them. And you look around the league, there's only maybe one guy that could stop him because his size, his strength, and his speed. Nobody could have stopped him because at the end of the day, think about this. Shaq would have probably been 20 for 23 in the paint. That's still 40 points. And that would have, and there's no coach alive would have been like, okay, we just not going to let Shaq kill us. We're going to double team to get the ball out of his hand. The same when you got a KD or someone coming off the screen, you double team him to get the ball in. You still going to stop the guy from scoring because dunks are going to get the teammates excited. They're going to foul guys out. And so to me, I think everybody looked at the formula that Golden State had because you always want to copy champions. And if you look back, other than the Golden State Warriors, you tell me a team that won a championship without a dominant big man. When I say dominant, like even though you said, oh, well, Cleveland won it, they had a dominant big man in LeBron because you get to the hole, he was able to do what he wanted to do. And then you can't tell me the other team, and people keep trying to copy Golden State. That is an anomaly. That is a team because you got two of the best shooters ever played this game on the team. So everybody want to copy that. That's just like me taking a mule and you got a thoroughbred. We going to a race, who's going to win that race? You. And that's what I try to tell people, man. Just because one team does it, don't mean you can do it.
I got two more for you, Robert. The first one being Mike Brown has talked a lot about it's easy to get from bad to good. It's really hard to get from good to great. And that's what the Sacramento Kings are trying to build on now. They finally broke that playoff drought, so that curse is behind them. Now they're trying to get to a position where they're a perennial playoff team and hopefully eventually a championship team. Can you speak on that good to great gap? How difficult is it to go from, hey, we're a good team to, no, we're a winner. We actually have a chance to win a championship consistently?
Well, that's the part, consistently. You got to consistently be able to get up mentally because the physical part, we know is hard, but the mental part is even harder. And I think a lot of guys have understand that once they get in the league, because as soon as the season's over, what do? A lot of guys jump back into the gym to get ready for the next season. But I always feel like you have to get that time, that battery to recharge. You have to take some time off to spend with your family, let your body heal. But so many guys now, they jump right back into the gym. So I do know by the time the season's up, you don't have that energy and that drive, and you wonder why your jump shot's short. But I think what he said is on the money. You consider, the Lakers a dynasty when I played for them. You consider the Spurs a dynasty when I joined them. And it's the consistency of the core players, the big dogs, and the willingness for them to sacrifice them. If you think about it, San Antonio is a perfect example. You think about Tim, you had David Robinson was so dominant. Tim comes in, he passes the torch, but still there. He's still there. He takes a lesser role. And then when Tony Parker comes in, he hits his prime step. Tim takes a step back. And most big men, or most superstars, I should say, they have that fear to step back and hand the reins over. You can even go down to the Miami Heat when Dwayne Wade let LeBron come in. I know LeBron is that guy, but he took a back seat. And let's say if you had another guy to come into the Sacramento as they get better and they grow this thing, will De'Aaron Fox be able to take a step back? Because he's a superstar, and I'm sure he would because he wants to win. And that's the sign of greatness when the superstars say, okay, I got this young buck over here that's probably a little bit better than me. Do I have the ego, the mentality, or whatever you want to call it, to step back and let this guy thrive. And that's how you stay great, for the superstars to take a step back, or the superstars just dominate like Shaq and Kobe did.
Finally, Robert, I had Doug Christie on a while ago when I did an audio documentary about the 2002 series, and he called that series simply basketball nirvana. He just says when he thinks back to that time, it's like that's everything you play for, that's everything you dream of. Even though the Kings didn't win that series and there was the heartbreak at the end of it, he remembers that series and that time so fondly. Do you view that series and that 2002 time of your career as the same? Like that's what it's all about?
It is. You think about, when you talk about a small rivalry for a small stint, you have that. You have teams that matched up pretty well. You had a team that wanted what we had. It's so many, scenarios that you can pick out. And I think for me, and you look at the way, Chris Webber plays, pretty much how Denver's playing right now. They pretty much running the same system. You watch them, and it is amazing. And you take pieces from greatness. And what they used to do with Bibby and Doug was amazing. And Vlade, rebounding, a guy who could shoot threes, and Chris is a Swiss Army knife who can do a little bit of everything. And it was a greatness. And you look at our team, we had pretty much the same team, except we had a big man that was just a little bit more dominant than their big man, and then probably one of the best athletes to play the game, and Kobe. And what it boils down to is, we always talk about this, that this is a new theme, is the culture, and it can start in the staff, but it has to thrive with the players. And I think when they had that team, even when they had White Chocolate, they was an exciting team. But they needed something else to go from fancy flash to consistency. And when they got Bibby, they had that. And I think if you watch the way Bibby plays, it kind of reminds you of De'Aaron Fox, if he probably shoots the ball a little more. But it was basketball nirvana, and I'm probably going to have to steal that. But it was just a great, and it's not just our series. It's other series that were around the league that was great. You think about the Miami Heat and the Knicks series, how great that was. And you think about, the Atlanta Hawks when they were back with Dominique and Kevin Willis and that crew. It's so many series. Reggie Miller, the Knicks, it's so many series throughout that time period, were just great series where you went out and battled. And I'm just happy that I got to play in that era, because I think that era was the era where NBA basketball started taking this big shine. You had the year when Jordan first started winning championship. That's when everybody started, fans and the world started, peaking up. You're like, who's this? Okay. And then Dream Team kind of made it even global. And next thing you know, we got this era for about 25 years where it was just ground and pound. Now it's flash and fast, but I like both eras, and I'm just happy to have been a part of the NBA family.
I really appreciate Robert for joining me and for spending the time to talk about a shot that I'm sure he's talked about a million times over the course of his career, and to talk about Sacramento and the Kings fans and spend that time the way that he did. I really appreciate it, especially during this busy time. So I hope you enjoyed that conversation. I hope you enjoyed that interview. Look, I will admit I enjoyed the interview. I enjoyed talking to Robert, even if it's a painful memory, whatever. I think I'm able to put it behind me a little bit enough to have a conversation with a former NBA player and someone with a history against the Sacramento Kings. So I enjoyed it. I hope you did as well. If you want to throw your virtual tomatoes, go ahead. I'm too fast. I'm going to dodge them. I was really good in dodgeball. No, it wasn't. But I hope you won't judge the show by any means based off of this kind of conversation. It was a unique opportunity that I had, and I absolutely took it. So this isn't what Locked On Kings is. You're not going to see former Lakers and Kings villains on the air all the time. If you're new to the show going, what the hell is a Kings podcast and Robert Horry is the guest? I know, I understand. This is not what Locked On Kings normally is. It's the off season, and it was a fun opportunity, and I jumped on it. So I appreciate you taking the time to listen as always. Hope you will join me for the remainder of this week. Got more draft coverage going on. The Kings are having some pre-draft workouts to talk a little bit about. I also, like I mentioned, I'm going to do a podcast later on this week talking more about Kings villains. Now, I won't have a Kings villain on for that podcast. At least I don't plan to at this point in time. But I'm going to do a fun episode with a media member here in Sacramento who knows a thing or two about Sacramento Kings villains. And he and I are going to dive through and go through the history of some of the biggest villains in Sacramento Kings history and talk about those a little bit. That's coming later on this week as well. So I hope you'll join me for that. Appreciate your support as always. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode of Locked On Kings. Until then, my name is Matt George. You have been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.